Morning. Welcome to the Richard Harrison Morning Show. My name is Richard Harrison. I want to thank you for joining me today. Well, it's Friday, and as per usual, Lee Gaddis is in the house this morning. Lee Gaddis, thank you so much for being here. We also are joined by Michael Imhotep. Thank you also for joining us this morning. Michael Imhotep is actually doing a presentation over at Nandy's. What is the whole name? Nandy's Knowledge Cafe. Well, a lot of you, Highland Parkers especially, are familiar with Nandy's Knowledge Cafe. And title of your presentation is Media's Deliberate Destruction of the African American Family.
Correct.
That's I guess we kind of touch on that on a day-to-day basis here,
Yes,
actually. And in fact, part of the a role that we see ourselves playing, certainly as black media in general, is sort of balancing the playing field, I guess.
Yeah, and given a more enlightened perspective as to what is happening when the media puts out a message around issues that concern the black community or ignore issues around the black community and raise questions that pertain to our community.
You know, I haven't had the opportunity to actually experience, I've experienced media in other cities, but to actually do a comparison. But, you know, because Detroit's media is extremely aggressive, obviously support their corporate bosses. In a very obvious way.
Right.
And has played a significant role in really the destruction, you're talking about the black community, in this whole transition that we're seeing here in Detroit, and the idea that a lot of people are dealing with, and it may be capped off with this recent push and this idea that's being planted that Detroit needs a white mayor.
Right.
It sort of collaborates, I guess, sort of to bring it to the head of a really racist initiative.
That's played out quite visibly. It's not like it's a hidden campaign.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
when somebody can be in the media and still have their job and say, is it time for Detroit to have a white mayor? But the question is never raised, well, is it time for a black governor? Since we've never had one of those.
Well,
is it time for Livonia to have a black mayor? Since they've never had one of those.
Well, not only that, you can look at Wayne County, and they have a European American heading up Wayne County. You see what's going on there. So just because you have a white mayor is not a solution. Just because you have a European in charge,
color is not a solution to any of the governmental problems.
Right.
So, and also, if you want to compare the media coverage between Robert Vacano and the coverage of Kwame Kilpatrick, you can do a stunning comparison of how those two criminal activities in government and how they're portrayed, because one is Caucasian and one was African American.
Right.
Well, when you look at the media and it's obvious this collaborative effort, is it that the orientation of those folks who are writing, or maybe the assignments that they get that comes across from a trained and in-depth eye, but that begins to look and sound like racism, or is it money? Is it the corporate control of the editorial page?
It's both of them. What we have to understand is that you've had a black inferiority campaign that's been propagated going back to the 1600s in this country. And then when the media comes into existence, you see it like in the 1800s with the creation of very stereotypical images. The Jim Crow image going back to about 1829 with T.D. Rice, who creates this Jim Crow character. You see the Mammies, you see the Coons, the Sambos. So these images manifest themselves throughout history in the movies, the TV shows, and in the news depictions of us also as being ignorant, as being criminals, things of that nature. So what you see today is an extension. It's not an anomaly. It's not something new. It's an extension of images that have their origins coming out of slavery. Okay, so we have to understand, this is one of the things that Tom Burrell talks about in the book Brainwash. He deals with the history of a black inferiority campaign that teaches us that we're inferior. It comes out of European white supremacy and racism, teaches us that we're inferior, and deals with the superiority of Europeans. So we have to understand what's going on. Okay, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and Dr. Nellie Fuller, two of our great scholars, they say if you don't understand European white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else will totally confuse you, and that's why we're confused today.
And there's another element of that, and it's part of even some of the discussion under and with Nellie Fuller.
Yes.
When you talk about this sort of black sexual super image,
Sure. The stud and the Jezebel.
and how that image misdirects and consumes so much energy.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if people tend to realize just how much, if you talk about the kind of energy that's put into pursuing for sexual conquest,
Sure.
using sexually to achieve material
Sure.
advantage.
Right.
When you're involved at that level, it's as though you have very little time for planning, for and am I wrong in terms of the assessment of the amount of energy that goes into that?
No, you're absolutely correct about that, and it's intensified over, I would say, probably the last 20, going back to the 90s when hip hop took a negative turn.
Right,
When hip hop took a negative turn, like in the early 1990s. You're absolutely right about that. It has its origins. First of all, we have to understand we're dealing with a Eurocentric, male-dominated, patriarchal system. Number one, that Europeans devalued their women, but they, in comparison to African American women or African women, they put them on a pedestal. So what you're dealing with is like the images of the Jezebel, the images of we have to understand during slavery. We were property. We were dehumanized, objectified, and the sexuality of African American men and women was objectified and dehumanized as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I can give you examples. When I lived in the South, I overheard a conversation. The guy said that you can't rape you can't rape a black woman.
exactly. That comes out of slavery because she was your property,
Yes.
and you could do what you want with her.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was in the 80s that people were still saying that.
Yeah, exactly, because that mindset still exists to a certain extent in some Southerners.
Because you have this phenomenon.
Sure.
And I don't know how accurate it is, but I was at a training or seminar.
Okay.
And there was the presenter gave the statistics that 65% of all women on the east side of Detroit have been sexually harassed, or I don't even say sexually harassed, sexually assaulted. Thank you, Lee.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of that going on in America. Number one, a couple of things that
The military. There's a movie coming out
Yeah.
right now about
Yeah,
women
in the
being raped
military.
in the military and it being
Right,
covered up. 'Cause
right.
It's a white male
dominated.
dominated patriarchal system.
But it's not happening. But these are black males, black women on the east side of Detroit. 65% have been sexually assaulted.
Right. Well, what happens is the old saying
Internalized.
when America gets a cold, African Americans get pneumonia. So all those ills affect us more because we've been stripped of our history and culture, and your culture acts as an immune system which can protect you from those invaders coming in, as Dr. Maureen Baani teaches us. So since we've been stripped of that, we don't have that protective system there. Even during segregation, we had it more. We were more united then than we are today. So we have to understand that integration is the first step to disintegration. And so, so you see these ills happening. You see the breakdown. We can look at the amount of single parents. Okay, in the U.S. is about 28% of children are born to single mothers. For African Americans, it's 72%. Okay.
Which has to be a contributing factor if there's not a male in the home.
Exactly.
Then little girls are oftentimes not protected.
And also you have to look at the small number of people that are perpetuating these predatory behaviors and the large amount of people that they then affect.
Sure.
So it's not like a whole bunch of people are doing it. It's a small group of people that are disproportionately affecting a large group of people because there's not a male around to defend the household. And also you look at how they're self-brainwashing through rap music, the devaluation of women, that all your women are somehow B's and H's.
Right,
but
right.
you never see it in their music portraying their women that way.
These are some of the things I deal with in the lecture coming up this Saturday.
And you internalize it.
And it's more so in commercialized hip hop. I don't want to denigrate all hip hop. You have hip hop artists like Lupe Fiasco, you have Talib Kweli, you have some positive hip hop artists, Dead Prez, Common, Wise Intelligent. I've interviewed some of them on my show. But a lot of the commercialized hip hop objectifies them, and you really see a turn in hip hop in about 1996 when Lil Kim and Foxy Brown come up, because they totally changed the way that women have to present themselves in hip hop music. And you had a lot of powerful female hip hop artists who, after that time, they couldn't adapt to the change of having to be the sexy Jezebel type, half naked. They couldn't adapt to that change, and they faded away.
868-0351, 868-0342, 868-4336. The mayor had a what do you call it? Is it a town hall? Well,
fiasco is what he had.
a Lupe
Lupe fiasco.
out at Northwest Activity Center on
your
yesterday.
House.
Yes.
The police were well represented out there last night. And for me, now it's required by the charter that the mayor has to come out and every month and present a community forum. I think we as a community need to find a more sophisticated way to express ourselves and our frustrations, because other people all over the world are watching what we do. And when we come out just yelling people down and screaming and yelling, we look like we're crazy.
Was that really the tenor of how?
Yeah, the mayor got, just when he stepped on stage, it started.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he didn't even say a word. But just his presence. And I understand the frustration.
But also, in a part of the process of the message being translated, and the emotion and passion that's associated with it, I wonder, how else do you do that? If you walk in and you're thinking about, well, this is mixed company, and therefore we have to behave ourselves.
And every news outlet was there. Every news outlet was there, rolling video.
Well, and it's because they're going to caricature people who complain.
So my point being, why don't we as a community have a more sophisticated response, knowing how the media manipulates what we say and do, knowing how they're going to be portray us as a bunch of animals on TV and bring sympathy to the mayor from outside audience.
You were sympathetic of the mayor in that environment.
No, I was aware of how we were going to be presented. I was not sympathetic to the mayor or his situation. I think that if he was of a people person, he wouldn't have the situation that he's in. If he wasn't a sellout, he wouldn't have the situation that he's in. If he's not paying a CFO and all these other people $220,000 to do his job, the police wouldn't have to take cuts. If he wouldn't have all of these contracting, we wouldn't be in the financial mess. If he closed the incinerator and started a regional transit authority, we wouldn't have a financial crisis. If he wasn't working hand in glove with the governor to destroy Detroit, he would have more sympathy from the people, instead of just coming out and saying, I'm shocked there's gambling going on here. Mr. Mayor, here's your winnings.
Speaking of winnings, didn't anybody see the article in the paper? And I'm going to say this, go to the phone line. The other folks who probably also attended that meeting. Anybody see any article, anything concerning someone else jumping off of the Greektown garage? I got a phone call. Well, of course you didn't. I got a phone call.
You'll never hear negative media.
I got a phone call from somebody who was in Greektown, and he saw the body laying there. Was tempted to take a picture of it, but he just thought it may have been a bit insensitive.
The last time you heard something negative about the casinos when that police officer shot himself.
That is the fourth individual that have jumped from the Greektown garage.
And you will not hear it portrayed.
And they did not mention it in the media.
Because because the casinos are able to buy off editors.
I mean, they are the 800-pound political gorilla in the room.
Because right now you have a debate going on around putting more casinos in Detroit, and they do not want any negative publicity. The same thing the week before the Super Bowl came into town, you didn't hear one negative story about a shooting or killing in Detroit. Up until the time.
We go for a circle. The media knows how to behave themselves.
Yes,
the media knows how to do.
They know where their money's coming from.
How do you classify or qualify an individual like Nolan Finley, for example, who wrote the article suggesting that black women were a poverty and ghetto manufacturing factory? I mean, how do you qualify that?
That comes out of ignorance.
Well, this guy is a superstar with media in this town.
Right.
Because he speaks to a constituency that believes that black women are less than, that are inferior, and that is being internalized by people who consume that media.
A ghetto factory. That's amazing.
Right? And nationally, there was an ad campaign that said that the most dangerous place for African American children is in their mother's womb.
Right. That's because of the high rates of abortion. Since about 1973, you've had 13 million African American babies that have been aborted. And when you look at Planned Parenthood, majority of the Planned Parenthood abortion clinics